that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the very famous Tom Fennell.
Hello there.
I wave to him and he waves to you. I go to the internet every day and find news on energy and climate change, and when I find something I like, I put a synopsis, 50 words or so, put a link to the original article. I package about 10 or 15 of these together every day and post them on my blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com, geoharvey.wordpress.com.
And I'll interject here. If our viewers see something that's particularly interesting, go to your blog and click on the link there.
Yeah.
And you'll go direct to the original
see the original article. Anyway, once a week on Thursday morning, Tom and I get together and we talk about the 20 or so that we think are the most interesting of the week.
The best of the blog.
The best of the blog. And so that's what we're doing now. Today being the 28th of April. So we're starting on the 21st of April and running up until the 27th. There is one thing I want to mention. Before we start on the news, it happened to be in the news today. Okay. It actually appeared yesterday, but late. It was in the news today, and I just want to mention it because we will talk about it next week, but I think people should know about this. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, FERC, keeps track of infrastructure in the United States.
Who the FERC are they?
Oh no, Tom, don't do that. They keep track of the infrastructure in the country, and one of the things they report is all new infrastructure that's put in, aside from small stuff like rooftop solar, community solar, things like that, which, by the way, constitute 40 to 50% of all solar installations.
Well, collectively they're large, but individually
they're small. Anyway, today they put out their report, and it showed that for the first 3 months of 2016, this is a monthly report, but it showed that for the first 3 months of 2016, the amount of infrastructure added, they reported on that, and it showed the number one addition, 54%, was wind power. The number two addition with 39% was solar. Hydro and biomass each got about 2.5%, and trailing the rest was this wonderful bridge that we have to the renewable future, natural gas. Now, I should point out, that's not the way it's going to be for the whole year.
Right.
I mean, for one thing, we're going to have a nuclear plant very likely come on this year, and there will be larger natural gas additions. But nevertheless, it kind of shows you what direction the wind is blowing in.
And this is investor-driven, really.
This is very largely investor-driven, yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean,
interesting development.
It's an interesting development, and it's because the price of solar and wind has. Wind power is clearly the least expensive source of electricity.
In the next article, you're going to mention that has plummeted. That's the word you use.
Right. But we should start off with our regular stuff from
something a little bit more local.
21st. Yep. Work on the controversial Northeast Energy Direct Pipeline, and I'm running ahead of what you should be doing, Tom, because you're supposed to be reading the headlines.
Well, I'll read. Do
that.
I'm falling asleep at the wheel here. Kinder Morgan, you all know him.
Yeah.
Suspends the Northeast Energy Direct project.
Yeah.
This is a biggie locally.
Suspended the Northeast Direct Pipeline. A company statement blamed the suspension on inadequate capacity commitments from prospective customers. The project's cost
That's a smokescreen.
Yeah. The project's cost is estimated at $3.3 billion. What they're saying is we're not going to be able to sell the gas, so we're not going to be putting this in.
Basically, that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So my take on it, and I think I'm fairly right, Because this wasn't intended for Massachusetts, it was intended for export.
Yeah, it was intended for export.
And apparently the market over there isn't meeting their expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, gas is cheaper in Europe, but is it cheaper in Europe to transport it over there liquefied? And apparently not.
Yeah. So anyway.
So anyhow, this local effect here is the proposed natural gas generating station in Vernon is dead.
Absolutely.
Because it depended upon this pipeline being run.
But as we've pointed out, the people in Vernon have got lots of options besides natural gas.
And you can better believe they're thinking about it.
Yeah.
And they should be.
Right. That, by the way, was from the recorder. But you can't find it in the recorder anymore because they take it down. That was a Greenfield recorder. They take it down after a week. So, you know, if you go to my site, unfortunately, Tom just told me this morning that the recorder didn't have it anymore. There are other places you can find out about it, though.
I got it from the Reformer.
From the Brattleboro Reformer, which of course will take it down because you know, that's what they do. Okay, our next item here, which comes from Bloomberg, which doesn't take things down.
Republicans flinch on renewable power.
Flinch.
That's my word.
When the world leaders gathered in New York on Friday, that is almost a week ago, to sign the Paris Climate Accord, they did so against a changing backdrop. As the cost of wind and solar power has plummeted, the solid consensus against alternative energy in the U.S. Republican Party has begun to crack.
Well, the backstory here is really that while the leaders of the Republican Party, as an article of faith, have been slamming renewable power as being unreal, and you know, there's no such thing as global warming. That's in their Bible.
Yes.
You know, so they've been talking about that. Meanwhile, in more windy areas of the country, like northern Texas and South Dakota and stuff like that, the Republicans have been quietly building windmills and making money.
And making money. Okay.
And that's what this one's all about.
Yeah. And they're finding that since the price of wind is going down and the price of solar is going down and the price of all fossil fuels and nuclear continue to go up, that change is going to spread. Okay.
Okay, the next one comes along here. The Senate okays a far-reaching, ambitious energy bill.
Yes, this is from the Farmington Daily News. Tom, you should probably move us on the screen instead of that.
Instead of that picture there. Okay, well,
okay, the Senate passed a far-reaching energy bill on Wednesday. That is not yesterday, but a week ago yesterday, that reflects significant changes in U.S. oil and natural gas production and boosts alternate energy sources such as wind and solar power. The Senate passed its first ambitious energy bill in nearly a decade on a vote of 85 to 12. Now, this has got to have some Republican support for that to happen.
For sure. Oh, for sure.
So we're back to the same old thing that we were just talking about.
There's some stuff in this bill for everybody. It's not just a renewables bill. For example, it speeds federal approval of projects to export liquefied natural gas.
Yeah, but...
Which isn't going to happen, probably.
I know, that's the question I was going to ask is, who's going to be exporting natural gas?
Well, we just dealt with that one in the previous article.
Yeah.
A quote from the Heritage Foundation.
Oh, goody.
They denounced the bill as a continuation of government meddling in the energy economy.
Because they want to reserve the right for meddling in the economy for themselves.
Yeah, of course.
Really?
Of course. You know what's going on.
What is this all about?
You know what's going on.
Absolutely. Okay. Anyway, that was from the Farmington Daily Times. We do have a
we'll move along
picture
to the
coming
West Coast
up
here.
in the West Coast.
Yeah, let's get that picture.
San Francisco. You know, I got that movie. I have a DVD of San Francisco.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. Clark Gable and who is this very famous singer?
Lauren Bacall?
No. It was she used to do movies with she and a guy did a lot of movies together. Oh,
it'll pop into your head.
It'll pop into my head. I'll be talking about coal, and all of a sudden this name will come up. Go ahead.
Well, this is an interesting development because San Francisco becomes the first major U.S. city to mandate rooftop solar on new buildings.
Right.
Now, it's not every new building, it's larger buildings, and there are alternatives, but this is rather earth-shattering. And we visited this before.
We did.
When it was proposed by the Senate.
But they've actually
But now
done it now.
it's been passed, it's
Right.
been enacted.
Right. That was from treehugger. Just treehugger it's called.
Well, quick takeaway, rooftops will not only be reserved for solar, but will also be required to actually have solar on it.
Yes.
The first bill just said you got to
reserve the space.
Now they're saying no, you
You
got
got
to
to
put
put
it up.
it in. But although you do have a choice of
You can
of
put a
thermal
rooftop
or
gardens.
you could. Oh yeah, okay.
You can, yeah. There are other ways of meeting this.
Well, you can also have solar PV or solar thermal, so you can produce electricity or hot water. But I didn't realize that rooftop gardens were in there.
Green roofs or living roofs will meet the requirement,
Really?
which is nice. You know.
That's nice. It means that people can grow vegetables on their roofs or have a park there that they can sit in and enjoy the nice,
Absolutely.
nice
you know,
San
it's
Francisco.
a very underutilized resource in our city.
Yeah, drizzly weather.
Yeah.
Okay, our next item is from Inside Climate News.
Spikes in U.S. air pollution are linked to warming climate.
This is an interesting one. Over half of all Americans are exposed to unhealthy levels of either ozone or particulate pollution, putting them at risk for premature death and serious health effects, including lung cancer, asthma attacks, and developmental harm, according to the American Lung Association. That doesn't count the other things that we get courtesy of the fossil fuel industry, such as Lyme disease and
Not at all. No.
there's lots
What they're talking basically here is that thermal climate change is causing more droughts and more forest fires, and that's what's responsible for the spikes that they're talking about here.
Right.
These wouldn't occur if there weren't these fires popping up. And if you've been reading the news, there's a lot of fires out in the West.
A lot of fires, not just in the United States, but elsewhere. And it's a very serious problem. Okay, our next item is from the Financial Times. And the Financial Times is always a bit unreliable when it comes to holding onto information. So that it can be downloaded by people. But it's
There's a nice picture of a baseload power plant there.
There you go.
And what this article is about is that fossil fuel baseload is a dinosaur.
Dinosaur, my goodness.
Whoa.
Opinion in flexible baseload power is just what we don't need. Amory Lovins is absolutely right. This is an opinion piece that appeared in the Financial Times. And I don't think viewers are going to be able to get to this. Am I right, Tom?
Yeah, you won't.
Okay.
I had a tough time getting it. You had to send me a copy.
Yeah, it is time to recognize that inflexible baseload power is a dinosaur and a fallacy. We're quickly moving to a more democratic system involving small-scale generators and thousands of individuals. And you know, one of the things that, getting back to the Heritage Foundation and all that group, I've had friends tell me, climate change is a hoax. It was invented by socialists so they could get the UN to impose world government on us. And I said, wait a minute. The solution to this is to put solar panels on your roof. What does that have to do with socialism? And he couldn't come up with an explanation. But again, you know, the Heritage Foundation gets its money from people who make their money on fossil fuels. So they want centralized power, which means...
They're not going to talk about their interests. They're going to scare everybody.
I know, it's absolutely crazy. The fossil fuels industry is supporting the Heritage Foundation and all the state policy network and, you know, Freedom Partners.
And the Koch brothers were part of this.
Koch brothers is part of that. And when you look at who benefits from not going to renewables, well, two big organizations. One of them is fossil fuel industry, primarily in the United States, and the government of Russia.
That's interesting.
It's, you know, and you know, we've mentioned this before. In Russia, in Stalin's time, you know, when the people who founded the John Birch Society were in Russia, and got their experience on how these things are done. They had a tiny oligarchy that controlled the government, which that owned the means of production and got away with it by telling the people, this is the people's, it belongs to the people.
Yeah, that was a
In
good
the
one.
United
That was a
States,
good one.
we've got an organization which says it's patriotic, says it's pro-democracy, which really, if you look at it, you can see what they want to do is they want to install a tiny oligarchy that controls the marketplace, which owns the government and tells the people, but that's the government you elected.
Yeah, right.
And what's the difference? Okay.
There's a little takeaway here,
Yeah.
a little bit of optimism here, because it's what it's saying is that the utilities who are kind of resisting this now are going to turn around because there's an opportunity to make money. They already have the customers.
It's a huge opportunity to make money.
And they will see that eventually.
Yeah.
It's happening here in Vermont.
Most of the utilities in the United States, 80% of the utilities in the United States don't generate their own power.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, with 80% of them not generating their own power, you take a hypothetical utility, let's just call it Green Mountain Power for the sake of hypothesis. If Green Mountain Power got most of its electricity from Hydro-Quebec, it could replace that electricity by buying it from its own customers.
Which it is doing.
Yeah, exactly. And really what we have to be is fair about how this is done. So if a person puts solar power on his own roof, he should be able to sell it if he's got an excess.
Well, the model of the monolithic utility, generating huge amounts of power and transmitting it throughout the state with the transmission lines, is basically over. And distributed power is going to happen because it's just going to be more economic.
Whether they like it or not.
Yeah.
And if they adopt a business plan that takes that into account early, then they're going to have a business plan that makes money.
Yeah, right.
If they refuse to do that, they're going to be in serious trouble. Okay, are we up to Friday?
We're up to Friday. We're going to start right on Friday.
Moving like right along here. This next piece is from Yahoo. Yahoo News.
The solar developer SunEdison, which was one of the biggies about 5 years ago.
It was indeed, yeah.
It's in bankruptcy as an aggressive growth plan unravels.
Yeah.
And basically they overextended themselves.
They did. SunEdison, once the fastest growing U.S. renewable energy company, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection after a short-lived but unsustainable binge of debt-fueled acquisitions. The company said it had assets of $20.7 billion and liabilities of $16.1 billion as of September 30th.
Well, they're also playing some games here because they've got some subsidiaries that are making money.
Oh,
and
yeah.
They spun them off.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they're
they're
in a yield co now.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah. and what's happened here was it wasn't the business model of having and installing solar power that did them in. It was the business model of growing as fast as they possibly could.
Faster than they possibly could.
And it turned out to be, they just did it a little bit too fast. So what can you say about that? Well, you know, I read, I don't know, did I say that I had finished the book, The Big Short?
I think you read it two or three times.
No, I've only read The Big Short once, but I've seen the movie several times because I bought the movie through eBay. I bought a new copy of it. Okay. And it is amazing what people do in order to make money out of money, which was made out of money, which was made out of money, which was made out of money.
But money doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's the problem. You discover that you've got so leveraged, and in some of these cases, there were Morgan Stanley almost went out of business because one of its traders had sold shorts on mortgage bonds at half a cent on the dollar.
Wow. So
when he had sold, you know, an income of $50 million worth of these securities, yeah, what he got from $50 million, all of a sudden he's out $5 billion. This is not a good idea. Ladies and gentlemen, don't do this at home. Okay.
Well, the next one's a little bit more
We
optimistic.
have a picture on the next one, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Yeah, there we go.
Get it up here.
That's a nice picture of a deforested landscape. It is a nice picture of a deforested landscape. It looks kind
of... In that particular case, the deforesting isn't really harming much because the tea trees that you see in the picture there
Yeah.
are also generating carbon dioxide.
It's true. It
Generating
is true,
oxygen.
yeah. And this is from CNN.
And it's probably been done for a long time.
Yep. And it's called,
We're not as doomed as you think.
right, there are plenty of reasons to be scared about the future. Melting glaciers, intensifying heat waves, vanishing rainforests, falling temperatures, bleached out coal, and kids in China who don't even, coral, and kids in China who don't even know the sky is blue. Boy,
Yeah, that's a scary one.
But it's not the full picture.
Well, they gave us 5 reasons why the Earth is not as doomed as you think. And I've recorded them. I mean, there's a paragraph on each of them. But
Yep.
the first one is 195 countries have agreed to fight pollution. Well, we talked about that.
We have
We'll
indeed,
talk about
yeah.
it again today.
Yeah.
2, solar energy has gotten there's 7 ways in there, cheaper. 7 A's.
Yeah.
3, the world invested twice as much in clean energy last year as in coal and gas. So that's Wall Street talking.
Yes, sure is.
Okay. 4, electric cars are getting popular.
Yeah.
Much more so in other parts of the world than in
Right,
the United States.
and there was an interesting article on that today in the news that we won't talk about this week, but we will next week, and that is 4 different countries have been really serious about banning gas or diesel-powered cars altogether.
I read something on that. I think one of them is Denmark.
The Netherlands, Norway, and India, believe it or not.
India. Wow.
yeah.
Well, finally, the last one here is China is finally starting to clean up its act. And they
Yeah.
are. They're
absolutely
very well
are. There's
getting
no
aware.
question about it. There's no question about it. We may find that the use of fossil fuels peaked in China last year. They promised President Obama that they would do it by 2035, I think, but I think they may have done it last year.
Well,
That
they're
was
getting
from
a lot of
CNN.
pressure at home. And the Chinese
They're getting a
people
lot
are-
of pressure at home. You know, I was reading about, and I don't remember whether we've got this in this week's news, but there are water shortages in northern China that are just fierce. And there
Oh,
are,
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was one article that talked about a woman in a luxury high-rise, and she had to take the elevator down to the ground floor every day to get water because the pipes don't carry any.
There's not enough pressure to get it up.
There's
to
not
them.
enough pressure to get it to her apartment. Yeah, she had to go up she had to go down to the ground floor to get water, and then of course she was hauling this up in buckets.
Yeah.
And 2 buckets of water, you flush a toilet.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to go down and get more.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a real problem. You can't take a bath. She's got to go someplace else to do that, and that is a general problem in northern China. It's not just one city; it's
So
like
it's a widespread.
160 of them.
What's causing the water shortage? Weather?
Believe it or not, the thing that is the biggest culprit
Coal
is
mines.
coal-burning power plants.
All the power plants. Okay.
Yes.
Well, they do consume a lot of water.
Yeah.
I mean, they're boiling water. They're
Yep.
using the steam to generate power. What do they do with the steam? It goes up out the stack.
Yes.
That's consuming water.
And they consume about 20end of the water.
Wow.
I mean, it's and you,
Second order consequences,
Can
you
you
know?
replace them with wind and solar, which don't consume water? Yeah, you can. And of course, nuclear power's got the same problem.
Well, it's a different problem. They don't Well, they do consume
They-
water.
they
Yeah, they're
consume
using
water.
nuclear to boil water. For
Yeah,
sure. It's the same
that's right.
problem.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Where were
Well,
we?
we're talking
getting on
about
to.
the Paris Agreement.
We're going on to April 23rd.
And the article
Saturday.
says Paris Agreement signed. Now what?
Yes.
Okay.
Earth, let's see, more than 120, sorry about that, more than 170 nations attended the signing ceremony of the Paris Climate Agreement at the UN. For the agreement to enter full force, at least 55 nations comprising 55% of man-made greenhouse gas emissions must ratify it.
Well,
gonna happen.
that's the importance of this article.
Yeah.
That's the message of this article.
And this
they
is-
passed it, but it still has to be ratified.
That's right. And this is from an organization called Forest News, Center for International Forestry Research. They care.
And on that same subject, Obama is apparently worried that if there's a new Republican administration to replace him, they're not going to ratify this.
Well, they probably wouldn't.
They probably wouldn't. Well,
Unless they get a lot of pressure from people in the United States,
Yeah.
which they will sooner or later.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting into a position where the effects of climate change are already causing serious problems. And the next administration is going to have to deal with companies like General Motors, Ford, Nike, just to name a few, that are going to be saying to whatever president is there, we've got to deal with this. Mm-hmm. So eventually, the United States is, with or without Republicans in the House and Senate, in the White House, eventually we're going to get to it.
Eventually, it's going to.
But in the meantime, we're going to have losses at home.
Yep.
We're going to have a loss of national security.
Yep.
We're going to have a loss of American ability to compete against the Chinese, who are not going to be paying for fuel because they're going to be dependent on, I mean, really, if you care about the United States, you've got to do something. And I'm not going to say that all Republicans are all bad on all issues, but on this issue, the Republican Party in general is just flat out wrong at the national level.
As I said earlier, it's an article of faith. There is no global warming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice picture up here. I don't know what it is because it isn't really identified. But
No, it's not.
it looks like a looks like a rainforest.
It looks like a river in a rainforest. A very windy river in a rainforest. Okay. Our next item comes from Scientific American.
Hey, you've heard of a tree grows in Brooklyn? This is a microgrid grows in Brooklyn.
Yeah. The Brooklyn microgrid will operate as a backup option during storms, cyber attacks, and other disruptions. But in the long term, the infrastructure being installed could set participants on a path to fully owning the electricity their community generates, giving them their own power.
Well, that's the real story here.
Well, this is socialism.
Yeah.
This
But
is
it's
a
the
group
real
of
story.
people owning something together. I think that could be capitalism too, right? Couldn't it
Well,
be?
in a way it is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a sort of a blend of the two. It's cooperativism is what I call it.
It's cooperativism. It's only socialism if it belongs to the
Oligarchs.
yeah, right. If it belongs to a government. If it doesn't belong to a government, it's still socialism in the opinion of the Heritage Foundation, which believes that all renewable power is evil, fundamentally.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
Interesting backstory here. It's a short paragraph. Microgrids are hardly a new idea.
No.
Okay? When Thomas Edison first set the country on a course to light every house with tungsten filaments, he conceptualized a patchwork of small independent utility providers.
And we actually have that patchwork today in some parts of the country.
Well, he started it in New York City. I mean,
Yeah.
about every 5 blocks was going to be a generating station.
Right. And in Vermont, we have 3/4 of the state working with Green Mountain Power, but the rest of the state is a patchwork of small utilities.
Small municipals and
Other cooperatives,
other
whatever.
co-ops, yep.
Yeah. So that's an interesting situation there.
of course, there's a backstory behind the backstory.
Oh?
Edison was supporting only the direct current, which didn't allow itself to be upgraded through to high voltage through a transformer.
Not in those days.
Well, no, it
The
can be now.
Situation has dramatically
Oh, yeah.
changed now.
But back in 1910,
1910.
that's what Edison was thinking, and he hadn't lost yet to Tesla.
Well,
Tesla and Westinghouse were
Yeah.
pushing the AC.
AC.
And they succeeded in bringing a power line down from Niagara Falls to New York City.
Yep.
End of story, end of argument. That was
Yeah.
it, you know.
Well, it was a pretty impressive thing to do what they were doing.
Oh, yeah.
They could change voltages easily. He couldn't. That was a big deal in those days. Today we can change voltage easily. We don't care about that anymore. In fact, you can transmit DC power with only I don't know what the percentage
Very
is.
small loss,
It's small loss compared.
almost anywhere in the world.
Yeah, but it's smaller than AC today. Where in those days it was a serious problem.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
the real high voltage today is DC.
Yeah, right. So we're on to our next piece.
Okay, the next one says the U.S. power sector carbon emissions reached a 22-year low in 2015.
Yeah, this is from the National Resources Defense Council. There is some great news out of the Energy Information Administration. Carbon emissions from electric sector, our country's largest source of pollution that's driving climate change, fell significantly in 2015 to their lowest levels since 1993. This is attributable to a number of different factors, one of which is efficiency.
Absolutely.
And you know, they say that efficiency Vermont is what, our number 6 utility or something like that?
Something like that. Yeah, it's acting as a utility.
It's acting like a utility, and we are efficiency is reducing the demand, but in addition to that, we're having the supply being changed by having renewable energy put online. And,
so they're able to buy renewable energy when they need it at lower prices than they would have been paying for peak power.
Right. And
at least they're getting solar.
Yes.
Because solar's hitting the same time.
And you know, I talked to Lori Barg this last week, who is a local to Vermont and New Hampshire, expert on hydropower.
Exactly.
And she told me, actually she had told me this before, so it didn't come as a surprise, I remembered. Her calculation was that there's about 400 megawatts of hydropower available at dams that already exist in Vermont that are not producing hydropower.
Yeah, the dams are built for a different purpose.
400 megawatts.
That's a lot.
Is a lot. That's more than 2/3 of the original capacity of Vermont Yankee.
Yep.
And it's if we developed half of those, we would be developing a very large percentage of the total capacity that we need to develop.
I think so.
And so,
I'm fully behind her on that one.
Absolutely.
She's
and then
right.
on top of that, you've got 500 megawatts available on dams that are on the Connecticut and Deerfield rivers that are going up for sale, although there are some people who say that's socialism, and so we should continue sending our money out of state.
Well, Douglas called it communism.
Yeah, well, but he's such a nice guy. Yeah, okay. So that was from the National Resources Defense Council, and our next piece is from The Guardian.
Well, we've talked about these guys before.
Yep.
The EDF. That's Électricité de France. Okay?
Yes.
We talked about those guys.
Yep.
They're proposed to be a big investor in this Hinkley Point plant.
Right.
And the article here says EDF delays Hinkley Point C
Yes.
nuclear. That's power plant C at Hinkley Point.
Yeah, right.
The
They've already got 2. Hinkley Point C nuclear plant has been hit by more delays. EDF, the French energy company promoting the 18 billion pound reactor scheme, that is pounds, said there would be no final investment decision at least till summer. And since this, they have said till September.
They're getting cold feet.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this.
They're having problems. They've got
many times.
Yeah,
this project is crazy.
The project is crazy. There's no question about it. I mean, we're talking about a project which is going to cost upwards of $10 billion each for 2 reactors.
This article says 18 billion pounds.
Yeah, this is 18 billion pounds for 2 reactors. Yeah. So it's, oh, wait a minute. That's for C. You're right. 1 reactor. Anyway, the EDF is looking at this and saying this could break us. If anything goes wrong with this, we're going to be in serious trouble. The British government has guaranteed, 35 years of double the normal wholesale price of power.
Crazy.
And at that rate, they were not able to get British or even European investors. They had to get investors from China. If I were one of those Chinese investors, I think I'd be walking away. You got to have more control over your money than to be able to say, here's the money, and I'll wait till next September to know whether you're going to do anything with it.
Well, this EDF is, I think, 85% owned by the French government.
Right. That's socialism.
It is. And of that 15%, some of it is owned by the unions.
Yes.
So they have
a significant amount, in fact.
They got a voice in this.
Yeah, they do.
And they're saying, "Hey, look, guys, we don't think this is going to work."
This is their retirement money.
Yeah.
They don't want to lose their retirement money just because a nuclear scheme in Britain doesn't work.
Well, there's a lot more to that we don't even know about going on.
I'm sure there's a lot.
I'm sure there's some powerful people stand to make powerful money if it goes through.
Well, they also stand to make.
I'm a cynic. I don't know.
Stand to lose powerful money if it fails.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why everybody's upset about it.
Well,
so we're up to Sunday.
Let's move to something a little bit more pleasant.
Yes,
here.
this is from CNN. We've got a nice picture there.
I'm going to get it up.
This is Solar Impulse. What do you have for a title on
The
this?
Solar Impulse 2. Okay.
Yeah.
It lands in California after a Pacific flight. Now, this was the big flight from Hawaii to California. It took them 4 days.
Yep. It was not as long, I don't think, as the flight from Japan to Hawaii. I might be wrong about that. But
either one was a long flight.
They're both extremely long. Operating entirely on solar power and batteries in flight from Hawaii, Solar Impulse 2 touched down in Mountain View, California on April 23rd, just before midnight. The plane had taken off on April 21st, resuming a journey that had stalled on the island of Oahu for almost 10 months. That, by the way...
they had to replace all the batteries.
Yeah. That, by the way, is the Solar Impulse 2, and it's flying above the Golden Gate Bridge. And this is nowhere near midnight. They kind of hung around over San Francisco in a holding pattern for several hours so people could see them, apparently.
I think it was a photo op.
I believe it was a photo.
By the way, I'll mention this. You guys watching this thing, pull up this website. There's a slideshow there. There's about 25 pictures.
The slideshow is magnificent.
Pictures.
The slideshow is absolutely magnificent. And... you know, what had happened in the long journey to Hawaii was that because of a combination of factors, and it was a combination of factors apparently, the batteries overheated. And so they made it to Hawaii, but they had to deal with problems that they had before they took off again, and it took a lot of work, and it required making sure that the same problem would not happen again, which included putting in new software.
So they delayed for almost a year.
Yeah.
There's a good takeaway here.
Yeah.
The pilot, okay, whose name is Picard.
Yeah. Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'll quote him. "It's a new era. It's not science fiction, it's today.
Yes.
It exists, and clean technologies can do the impossible."
Yeah, they can do it. Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about it. Okay, we have to move on, Tom. We got a long ways to go.
One here. From the sublime to the ridiculous.
From the sublime to the...
Let's see. Yeah,
where are we?
That's ahead of the game.
That's ahead of the game. I'll put it back to where it was.
Put you back here.
Okay. We're just getting straightened out here, folks. We have
River on Fire.
A piece from The Guardian. And this was the Australian edition of The Guardian.
River on Fire in the Greens... Greens, that's a party.
Yes.
MP, member of parliament.
Yep.
Video is natural, not fracking.
He almost got himself fried in this picture. You really should look at it. This is in the blog on April 24th. Jeremy Buckingham, a member of the New South Wales Parliament's upper house, lit the surface of the Condamine River with a barbecue lighter to demonstrate the dangers of fracking. He posted a video on Facebook on Friday. By Sunday, it had 22 million views. And this was a river going by a fracking field.
Yeah.
And the bubbles were coming up, making it look like there was bottles full of soda water on the bottom of the river. It was crazy. They were coming up so fast. He lit them with a barbecue lighter, and then he had trouble putting the fire out again because it just kept burning and burning and burning there on the surface of the water.
There's this outfit called the Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organization. I don't know who the heck they are, but they're saying, no, that gas is natural. It was always happening.
It's natural gas, right.
It's natural gas, but he's saying They're saying it's occurring naturally.
Yes,
And he's
and
saying,
it's
no,
coming up
it's
through the-
coming up because of fracking.
It just happens to be coming up in a fracking field, and the fact that it's so available that it just bubbles up through the river means that fracking is probably going a little bit overboard. You don't need to do that to get the gas, but yeah, it's natural.
Well, what he says about
sorry.
it, it would be the most remarkable coincidence that the very thing that we warned would happen has happened in the middle of a gas field, and it's totally unrelated.
Yes, well, yes.
But
Okay.
he's got arguments there. These
This
other
is
people
like
are
my
saying
kid's
it's natural.
got cavities in his teeth. He eats candy all the time, but of course there's no relationship between the two.
Just a coincidence.
Yeah. Okay, our
By
next-
the way, there happens to be near Binghamton, New York,
Yeah.
a falls that burns, and that is natural.
Oh, really?
It may have intensified, but yeah, it's been there for years. They call it the Burning Falls.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay, our next piece is from the solar industry.
We got a nice picture coming up here.
We do. This is the
let's get it
Brooklyn
up.
Bridge seen
That's
from...
a nice picture.
It is, and that's not far from where I used to live. That picture was taken. It is a mile or two away.
It's
but-
not far from where I used to work,
Yeah? Where did you work?
the Transit Authority.
Oh, okay.
Their building was a half a block from the Brooklyn Bridge.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I went to school in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
Okay.
you went to Pratt, did you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Good school.
Yes, it is. Okay, this is from Solar Industry. We have a title for this, Tom? Or?
This is New York City launches community solar program.
Right.
Again, a good portent of things to come.
Yeah. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio recently announced that the amount of solar power installed in the city has tripled since the beginning of 2014. Now he has launched Solarize NYC, a new citywide program designed to further increase access to solar through community group purchasing campaigns over the next 9 years. And by the way, this Solarize is very different from the Solarize campaigns that we've had in the Connecticut River Valley and other places.
From what
in
I
Vermont
see
and New
here,
Hampshire.
these guys are existing to help communities develop their solar.
Right. That's socialism.
Well, Solarize is a privately...
It's not socialism. But there
It's
are
private-
people who would call it socialism.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. We have to move along.
All righty.
Okay.
I hate to get rid of that picture.
Isn't that a beautiful picture? Yeah.
Okay, the next guy.
Middle East Eye is the source of this. Go ahead, Tom.
Where did all the oil go?
An
The
intense,
peak is back.
Yep, an intensive scientific analysis published in widely interdisciplinary reviews, Energy and Environment, says that proved conventional oil reserves, as detailed in industry sources, are likely overstated by half. The author is a former chief economist at Royal Dutch Shell Group.
This isn't necessarily bad news.
Well, it depends upon how you look at it.
Well,
Whoop.
eventually they're going to have to divest. They're going to have to get rid. They're going to have to keep some of this oil in the ground.
They're going to have to.
They're going to have
There's no
to.
question.
So what these guys are saying, well, there isn't as much down there as we've been telling you anyhow.
Yes, right. Don't worry, folks. We're not getting hit as bad as you thought. Okay, should we
This
go
was
on?
written by a guy named Nafiz Ahmed, and I follow this guy. This guy's a
Oh,
very
really?
good reporter.
Good.
He doesn't always talk about energy. He talks about politics and stuff like this.
Yeah, where is he?
He's an American, believe it or not, with that name.
He lives in the United States?
Yeah, I think he lives in Detroit.
Detroit, good
Yeah.
place. Yeah.
He's a PhD. He's a bright guy, and he's a good reporter. So if you see Nafiz Ahmed, it's probably worth reading.
Good. All right. Our next item, and I just lost it on this computer.
Well,
here we
let's
go.
get this pic. We got a picture coming
from
up.
the. Oh, yeah, we've got a picture coming up. That's right. All I've got to do is find it. Okay. Okay. Here I am. Is this the? Oh no, that isn't it.
It's India. It's a transmission
It's
line.
India. Yeah, the Guardian. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, we got it from Live Mint, but
Okay.
Indian transmission. It's there. It is.
There it
we
is.
go.
Yeah.
You got it. Power demand forecast cut to adjust for efficiency. And we just talked about efficiency here. And they've been predicting how much power they're going to need. Well, let's read it.
Yeah, all I got to do is find it. I'm still, I'm still looking. I found the slide. Okay. Gotcha. India's Union Power Ministry estimates India's electricity demand in 2017 to 22 period will be 20% less than what was originally estimated, thanks to new energy efficiency targets and power-saving devices. Estimates demand in 2022 have been reduced from 298 gigawatts to 239 gigawatts. This is in Live Mint, which
Part of what's really going on here is light bulbs.
Well, they've been...
The government has been giving away LED light bulbs to the Indian people.
Yeah.
And these LED light bulbs will give you the same amount of light for about 1/6 of the wattage.
Right.
A fifth anyhow.
Yeah.
And bingo.
Yep.
Instead of 75 watts, you're burning 15.
That's right. And
and we're doing it here in America
when
too.
When you do that times hundreds of millions,
it's significant.
It becomes significant. Yeah. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, April 26th.
And we got a picture here too.
We do. And this is from the BBC.
Chernobyl disaster. The Ukraine marks its 30th anniversary. It doesn't seem like it was so long ago.
No, it doesn't. Ukraine is holding commemorations to mark the 30th anniversary of the nuclear disaster in Chernobyl. The UN-backed Chernobyl Forum estimated up to 9,000 people would eventually die from radiation exposure, though Greenpeace claims the figure could be as high as 93,000. Greenpeace's claim is not the highest, but the nuclear industry has people in it who say that the number will be 23.
Okay. Well, it says here the meltdown at the Soviet plant was the worst nuclear disaster in history.
But I don't know that that's true because
Fukushima
might have been worse.
Yeah.
You know,
But
we have not been.
They covered this all up.
We have not been told everything that happened at Fukushima.
Not at all.
One thing we do know about Fukushima is that there was fuel found 1.5 miles from the plant.
How did that happen?
Well, it fell out of the bottom of a reactor, and a squirrel that happened to be there picked it up thinking it was a
radioactive squirrel.
Well, it was radioactive when it was done, and it ran about 1.5 miles before it dropped dead.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Something blew up at Fukushima, probably reactor 3, but we know that that fuel was found. And we know that it did not come from a spent fuel pool because some very nice folks at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission have told us so in a conference call.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
On, I think it was the 17th of July, 2011. That's my recollection. Might have been the 19th or something like that. But it was an interesting thing to hear somebody say that, and then all of a sudden, the microphone was taken away from him. He wasn't allowed to talk anymore.
Well, Putin had something to say about this. Mm-hmm. He gave a message to the Russian people, 600,000 of them. Oh, not the Russian people, all the people who helped in the cleanup.
Yeah.
600,000 people helped in the cleanup.
Yeah, well,
wow.
It's a minor problem.
They're called liquidators for whatever that's worth. He called this nuclear disaster a grave lesson for all mankind.
Grave. It's interesting that you would be putting liquidator and grave into sentences that follow each other. Okay. This is really sad. It's really, really sad, and I don't think people take it seriously enough.
Well, I'll let you go by this next one quickly because we've kind of discussed it already.
This is from Nuclear Street, nuclear power plant news, jobs and careers.
Yeah. And EDF has again pushed back the date for making a decision.
Well, there you go. EDF has pushed back the date for making a decision on the 3,200 megawatt Hinkley C nuclear power project. I think this is 2 reactors, Tom. The decision at this point will not be made earlier than September, according to French media reports. And my bet is that between now and September, they will forget that they said September. And in fact, they might even forget that there's a nuclear power plant planned.
Oh, I bet you it's never going to happen, but you're not going to take that bet, I don't think.
No, I'm not. But there are, you know, you've been offering that bet for quite a while. Yeah. I haven't heard anybody coming along and saying we should do that. Okay, our next piece is from Venezuela, and this is on April 27th. Yeah, and this also is from the BBC. So what have you got here, Tom?
Venezuela introduces a 2-day week to deal with the energy crisis.
A 2-day week. Man.
Well, they're right now, I think they're on a 3-day week. So.
Venezuelan government has imposed a 2-day working week on public sector workers as a temporary measure to help it overcome a serious energy crisis. Venezuela is in the middle of a major drought, which has dramatically reduced water levels at its main hydroelectric dam.
Well, what you're looking at there is a reservoir.
It's the reservoir, yes. Do you see all the water? You see
There's some
the
in the
water?
background
Yeah,
there,
there's
yeah,
a
a
little
little
water
bit.
in the background. That guy is standing on the top of a dam. It's obviously an earthwork dam.
Yeah, he's the electricity minister.
And there should be, that area in front of him should be entirely covered with water. But it ain't. And that means that they've only got one big dam in Venezuela.
Apparently so.
And they've got, on top of everything else, they've got an economy that is based very heavily on the sale of oil.
Oil,
and the price of oil is low.
Right.
So they can't make any money, and they're probably losing money by selling oil. But like a lot of oil organizations, they're probably in a position where they can't borrow money because nobody values their assets, so there's no collateral. And they can't get money any other way except by selling the product they've got, but they lose money selling the product, but they've got debts they've got to pay.
They got to
and
sell it anyhow.
They have to sell it whether they're losing money or not. They're in a really serious problem. And they have been subsidizing gasoline locally until not very long ago when they decided they'd multiply the price by, I forget what the factor was. 10,
but that was a very
20,
unpopular move.
Very unpopular move. Starvation is worse. Okay.
Coal for water.
Yeah.
Crisis. Now, we don't think about this. We touched on it already. But
yeah.
We don't think about this much. Coal for water. Crisis incoming.
Yeah, the world is rapidly dwindling. Freshwater resources could be further depleted if plans for hundreds of new coal power plants worldwide go ahead, threatening severe drought and competition, according to new Greenpeace International report. And, this is kind of mind-blowing when you get right down to it. Coal-burning power plants? Really? We're talking about more climate change problems.
Well, these are mostly scheduled for the third world, for developing nations. And in some cases, it's their only option.
Well, they think it's their only option. They're still bent on the old paradigm, the old business model, which says we need centralized power, we need big power companies. Whether they're private or public, it doesn't matter. They have to be big, and they have to be centralized. We need big transmission lines in order to get this power to people. And the idea that you could take a person who has never had electricity and put a 25-watt solar panel on the roof of his grass hut,
which is happening.
Give him a car battery and an LED and a pocket radio and a big television set. And, the only other thing they really need is more solar panels to operate their air conditioner. I knew a woman years and years ago. She was the daughter of a guy who worked for the United Nations. And she literally grew up in a grass shack, living in a grass shack in Kenya. And she loved it.
Huh, cool.
Yeah, and then they sent her to Belgium to go to school. She absolutely couldn't stand it. It was a disaster. It sounded like, her school days in Belgium sounded like a repetition of Jane Eyre at Lowood Academy.
Oh, yeah?
Where the water they washed in the morning had ice on the cover of it. Boy.
Well, we touched on this thing before, that coal plants, or any kind of plant that works with boiling water,
is going to consume water. That's right.
And as I said earlier, it goes up the chimney.
Yeah. And on top of everything else, these plants not only consume water, but they alter their environment by toasting the water that they release back to the environment. And an example was Vermont Yankee, which raised the temperature of the Connecticut River.
Yeah, this isn't the processed water. This was the cooling water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, the coal plants will do that more than nuclear plants, but the big thermal plants all have that same characteristic.
Well, according to the International Energy Agency, whatever that is, coal could account for 50% of the growth in global water consumption for power generation over the next 20 years. So this is a serious issue.
You know what, Tom? I bet it doesn't. You want to take that bet, that it doesn't? My bet?
No, I wouldn't. I think it isn't going to take very long for them to realize that they don't have to pay for fuel.
You know how much coal has been installed in the United States in the last 3 months?
I don't think there's any been.
0. We were talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
They had 3 megawatts last year of coal in the whole year. 3 megawatts.
3?
3 megawatts.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking about an amount of power that wouldn't even be half enough to power Brattleboro, Vermont.
Yeah.
And that was nationwide. 3 megawatts.
Okay.
And, you know, I mean, the coal's days are over, and the people who are in the political position to try to do it are trying to make this President Obama's fault, and it isn't. It has nothing really to do with President Obama. The Clean Power Act, Clean Power Plan, has not been instituted yet. The reforms that it envisioned have not come about yet, and the coal people are already complaining that it caused them to close down all these plants last year.
Yeah,
China
China
is going to close down 1,000 coal plants this year.
Well, China is going to really do it. I mean, we'll eventually do it too.
We're closing down a lot of coal-burning power plants. We
but
really
because
are.
they're not making money.
Well, part of the reason why they're not making money is because we're not allowing them to spew mercury all over the place, which is poisoning
they should be
us.
allowed. It's just a free market. They should be allowed.
Right.
Everybody should take a little mercury for breakfast there.
Yeah, right. Anyway.
There was a takeaway I got here. After I finished working on this yesterday, I got an email. And I'll just read the title. Astonishing momentum is building for a global transition away from fossil fuels.
Yes. Astonishing. I would agree with that. And you know, the thing that's interesting about this, Tom, is I just finished, as I mentioned earlier, the book and the movie, The Big Short.
Now, what's that about?
Well, basically, this is about the housing crisis in 2007, 2008.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, yeah. The short
What
selling.
had happened was the housing, the mortgages were being packed in mortgage bonds. And the mortgage bonds were being sold. Now, what had happened was the banks had been doing this and making money on it. And they had been packaging so many mortgages into bonds that they were running out of mortgages to package. So they started giving mortgages to people with less and less who couldn't pay.
Yeah. And they
even had mortgages that had a clause in them saying, if you don't pay, we'll extend the mortgage by a month.
Okay.
What kind of nonsense is that?
Something else was going on, clearly.
Something was going on. They gave mortgages. In one case, they gave a mortgage to a guy who was making $14,000 a year, picking strawberries on a house that cost $750,000. What? Nothing down.
Sounds like a good deal for the guy.
Yeah, if he could only just pay the monthly mortgage bills,
he probably
which he
couldn't pay the first month's rent.
Couldn't. Yeah. They were giving mortgages called ninja loans, which meant that there's no income, no job.
Yeah.
And this was something that was being done a lot. Well, there were people who started shorting these, which meant that they were basically betting against them.
Okay.
And then what happened was other people came along and bet against those, or it was like a big gambling party. So a lot of people lost a lot of money, and that was why we had. Well, this is just consider the fossil fuels industry. They're going to lose $100 trillion.
So what you're saying
if we
is
deal with climate
analogous
change.
to what went on.
There's going to be a lot of problems in the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah, fear not, the government will bail everybody out.
Anyway, we're at the end of our hour for sure, and so we have to say goodbye to everybody, and that's too bad, but it's true. Huh. So we'll just say goodbye.
Goodbye.
See you next time.
See you next week.
Strong as it will. and stay lovely still.